2 armed men rode onto the property. She was alone on the trap line, rifle in hand, heart hammering so hard she could barely think. She could have run. Nobody would have blamed her. She'd been running her whole life, from her father's voice, from a town that forgot her name, from a future that felt like a cage. Instead, she stood up, leveled that rifle, and said 4 words that rewrote who she was. "This is my land." And she meant every syllable. On this channel, the West is more than a setting. It's a story about love earned the hard way, women who found their voice, and the rare kind of man worth trusting. The lesson? Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the moment you decide what you're standing for is bigger than what you're afraid of. Like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone fighting their own battle right now, and subscribe, because we're just getting started. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. Thank you for being part of our community.
Hank's hand hit the porch table. "Done," he said, never once glancing at Mary. He was already reaching for the whiskey bottle sitting between him and the big mountain man. Mary just stood by the fence post, her hands clenched tight. Her father said, "She's a strong one, quiet. Won't be a bit of trouble." He described her just like a pack mule. The stranger, Elias Boone, ignored the offered drink. His hat was pulled low as he watched Hank. "Does she have a say in this?" Elias asked, his voice quiet. Hank just scoffed. "She goes where she's told." Elias pressed him. "I'm asking if she agreed to it." Hank's temper flared and he slammed the bottle down. "Mister, you need help on your homestead. I'm giving you a fine deal. 3 horses, supplies, and a woman who works hard. You want it or not?" Elias was silent for a spell. Then his gaze turned slow and settled right on Mary. She felt a jolt, not of fear, but because nobody had truly looked at her in a long, long time. He saw her, really saw the life and hurt in her eyes. "Ma'am," he said, his voice calm and full of respect. Her father jumped in. "She's just shy is all." Elias kept his eyes on Mary. "I wasn't asking you." That simple sentence landed with the force of a thunderclap. Hank Whitaker's face turned beet red. "Ma'am," Elias said again, his eyes still locked on Mary. "Do you want to come?" Her throat felt tight as a drum. She looked from her father to the rundown ranch, the house where her mother died 7 years before. Then she looked at this stranger asking a question she'd never heard in her life. "Does my wanting it matter?" she whispered. Elias nodded. "It matters to me." Hank slammed his glass on the table. "The deal is done, Boone. Shake my hand or ride on out of here." Elias rose to his feet, taller than her father by a good measure. He looked at Hank with a steady gaze. "I'll take the deal," he said. "But I'm not buying a person. I'm offering a choice." They left at first light. Mary had one small bag holding everything she owned in the world: a dress, a comb, and her mother's old Bible. Elias had the supplies loaded on 2 pack horses. He moved with a quiet purpose that said he was at home in the wild. Mary climbed onto the mare he provided. She didn't bother asking where they were headed or what he wanted from her. Questions just got you noticed, and she'd learned to be invisible. They rode north, away from the only life she'd ever known. She felt a strange emptiness, a nothingness that was more frightening than sadness. A few hours later, Elias stopped by a stream. "Let's water the horses," he said, then added, "Are you hungry?" Mary shook her head no. He studied her for a moment, then pulled some jerky from his saddlebag. He tore off a piece for himself and set the rest on a nearby rock for her, without saying another word. She just stared at it. At home, she always ate last, if there was anything left at all. She picked up the jerky and ate it slowly, watching him. "How far is your place?" she finally asked. "About a 2-day ride, if this good weather holds," he said. "Up in the mountains. It gets cold." "I don't mind the cold." His eyes met hers, and she saw a flicker of understanding. He knew what it meant to not mind being uncomfortable. "I've got a cabin," he went on. "Solid enough. Built it myself, mostly." He looked off toward the distant peaks. "I've been on my own for a long while, ma'am." Mary knew exactly what he meant. A person could be completely alone in a house full of people. She had been for 26 years. By that evening, they were high in the mountains, with the valley floor looking like a distant memory. The air grew thin and cool. Elias made a small camp, building a fire and laying out 2 bedrolls a respectful distance apart. Mary watched his big, scarred hands as he worked. They looked strong enough to break a man, but gentle enough to handle something delicate. "You can take that one," he said, nodding to the bedroll closest to the fire. "I'll take the first watch." "Watch for what?" "Mountain cats, maybe," he said with almost a smile. "Mostly nothing." Lying under the stars, she spoke his name. "Elias, why did you take me?" He poked the fire for a long time before he answered. "I needed the help, that's true. But when I saw you standing there, I've seen animals that have been beaten down till their spirit is gone. I know what it looks like when something alive is made to feel like it's worthless." Mary felt a tightness in her chest. "You're not worthless, ma'am," he said softly. "Whatever he told you, it's a lie." She turned her back to the fire, hiding her face. "You don't even know me." "No, ma'am, I don't," he agreed. "But I know what I saw." For the first time and as long as she could remember, she felt something new. She felt safe. The homestead was a small log cabin tucked against a ridge with a creek nearby. It wasn't much, but it was real. "It's all yours," she said, looking around. "It's ours," he corrected her, "if you decide to stay." He pulled the saddle from his horse. "I told you, I'm not your owner. You are free to leave any time you want. I'll give you a horse and supplies and point you toward any town you want to go to." Mary just stared at him, unable to understand. "Why would you do that?" "Because that's how it ought to be," he said simply. "That's not how the world works." "Well," he said, "maybe it's time it started." Elias told her she was free to leave, a thought nobody had ever offered her before. She just picked up her bag and walked to the cabin, asking him to show her around. That first week passed in quiet work. He gave her the bedroom and slept by the fire. He never asked her to cook or clean, just showed her the work that needed doing on the fences, traps, and garden. She took on every chore, not to impress him, but because hard work was the only language she truly knew. On the 4th day, she found him setting a new corral post. "I can hold that," she offered. They worked without a word for nearly an hour. When they finished, he stepped back and said, "Solid. I can tell you have done fence work before." The simple way he said it, like a plain fact, made her feel a little taller. On the 6th day, she was checking traps by the creek. She heard the sound of fast-approaching horses, and it froze her blood. She grabbed the rifle Elias insisted she carry and hid behind a big rock. 2 rough-looking men on horseback rode out of the trees. One had a rope on his saddle, the other a shotgun. They paused, looking right at Elias's cattle. Her heart pounded. She could run for help, but a new feeling had been growing inside her all week. "No." She stood up tall, leveling the rifle. "This is private land," she said, her voice steady. The man with the shotgun just laughed. "Well, now look at this little farm girl playing tough. I am not playing. Turn your horses around." She cocked the rifle, and the click sounded loud as a canyon echo. "Or you can find out." The laughing stopped. The men gave each other a long look. The one with the rope spat. "This is my place, too," she said. The shotgun rider finally shrugged and turned his horse. "This ain't worth the trouble," he mumbled as they rode off. Mary stood there until the sound of their horses was gone. Then her hands began to shake something fierce. When she got back to the cabin, Elias was splitting firewood. He took one look at her face and put the axe down. What happened? Two men were eyeing your cattle. His face stayed calm, but his eyes got hard. They touch anything? No. I ran them off. He just stared at her for a second. You ran them off. I had the rifle. Did they give you trouble? They tried to. It did not work. Elias was quiet for a long time. Then he smiled. It was just a small, slow smile, but it said everything. I reckon I will not have to worry about rustlers with you around, he said. I was not brave, she said, turning away. I was scared to death. That is what brave is, ma'am. My name is Mary, not ma'am. He picked up his axe and split a log with one clean swing. All right, Mary. And with that one word, she felt like a person again. Not property, not a burden, just Mary. For the first time, someone said her name like it mattered. In the quiet days that followed, something changed. Mary started waking up first, getting the coffee brewing before Elias even came out. The first time it happened, he just stood in the doorway, looking at the pot. You did not have to do that. I know, she said. I wanted to. He poured a cup and took a long sip. Best coffee I have had in 3 years. It is the same coffee from yesterday. He shook his head. Yesterday I made it. A smile almost touched her lips. They fell into a rhythm that felt more like a conversation than a chore. One would start a job, and the other would finish it without a word needing to be said. On the 9th day, while he was showing her how to set a snare, his hand brushed against hers. They both froze for just a heartbeat. Elias pulled his hand back quickly, his ears turning red. Later that night, as she was mending one of his torn shirts by the fire, he came inside. You do not have to mend my clothes. You do not have to keep telling me what I do not have to do. He set down the firewood and looked at her, truly looked at her. Fair enough, he said softly. My mother used to sew, Mary said, surprised by her own words. She made all my dresses until I was 12. After she died, my father said sewing was a waste of a good hand who could be hauling feed. Elias waited a moment before he spoke. What was her name? In 14 years, not a single person had ever asked for her mother's name. Ruth, she whispered, the name cracking in her throat. That is a good name, he said. That man said she was a good woman just because she raised me. Mary's hands froze, the needle in her fingers shaking. She bit the inside of her cheek, tasting blood. Fighting back tears she swore she would never shed. She had built a fortress around her heart, and she wouldn't let this quiet man, with his rough hands and gentle voice, tear it down. You have no idea what she raised, Mary said, her own voice coming out like chipped stone. He just looked at her. I know who I'm looking at right now. She pushed the needle hard through the thick cloth. He went on. A woman who faced down 2 armed men without so much as blinking. I blinked plenty, she thought. He seemed to hear her. You held your ground, that's all that matters. The fire crackled, breaking the silence. Why are you so kind to me? The question finally escaped, the one that had been a heavy weight on her chest every night. Is it because you pity me? Elias leaned in, his eyes meeting hers. Mary, I have been up on this mountain alone for 4 years. I've had more conversations with my horses than with people. I reckon I've forgotten how to say things I don't mean. So when I tell you this isn't pity, he said, you can take that to the bank. Then why? She asked. Because you deserve it, he said simply. And maybe because you've gone so long without kindness, you've forgotten what it even looks like. She set her mending aside and stood. I'm going to bed. When she reached the door, she paused. Elias? Yes? The shirt is finished. Try not to snag the shoulder on the fence wire again. Yes, ma'am, he answered softly. She shut the door, leaned against the wood, and for the first time in 14 years, Mary cried. Not from sorrow, but from the terrifying shock of being treated like she was worth something. The next morning felt ordinary. After chores, she was weeding the garden when the sound of wagon wheels drifted up the trail. Elias came out from the barn, his jaw tight. "Stay inside," he said. "No," she replied, her voice firm. He turned, surprised. "Mary, whatever is coming, I will be standing right here beside you." He studied her face for a moment, then gave a single nod. He went inside and returned with 2 rifles, handing one to her. When the wagon came into view, Mary's blood ran cold. She knew that wagon, those horses, and the man holding the reins. She had spent 26 years learning every angry line on that face. It was her father. Hank Whitaker stopped the wagon and climbed down, moving slow and deliberate. He looked meaner than she remembered, a bottle sticking out of his coat. Behind him on the wagon sat a young man wearing a marshal's badge. "Well now," Hank said, spreading his arms wide. "There she is." Elias stepped forward, a calm presence between them. "Mr. Whitaker, that is a long ride up here." "It is," Hank spat. "Folks in town are talking, saying I sold my own daughter to some mountain man." "The sheriff sent his boy here," Hank said, jerking a thumb at the young man, "to make sure everything is proper." The young deputy looked uneasy. "Mr. Boone, ma'am, I'm Deputy Wells. I just need to ask the lady if she is here by her own choice." "She is," Elias said flatly. "I would rather hear it from her," the deputy insisted. Elias stepped back, giving Mary the floor. Her father stared, his eyes thin slits, a look that had always promised pain for disobedience. For 26 years, that look had owned her. But not today. Mary gripped her rifle and looked the deputy square in the eye. "I am here because I want to be." The deputy pressed. "Is that the truth, ma'am?" "No one is forcing you." "The only man who ever forced me to do anything," she said, her voice ringing clear and strong, "is standing right there behind you." A bolt of lightning seemed to crack the air. "You ungrateful," her father started. "I am not finished," Mary declared. "My father traded me like I was a head of cattle. In my whole life, he never asked my opinion about a single thing." The deputy's eyes were wide. Mary went on. "Mr. Boone, on the other hand, asked me if I wanted to come here. He told me I could leave whenever I please. He gave me my own room and my own rifle. In 2 weeks, he has shown me more respect than my father has in my entire life." Her father took a threatening step forward. "Now you listen here." "I am not a girl," Mary said, her chin high. "And I am not yours." Hank turned to the deputy, his face turning red. "See? He has poisoned her mind against me." "Before what?" Mary shot back. "Before someone showed me what a decent man looks like. This man barely speaks to me. And I still feel safer on this mountain than I ever felt in your house." The words hit him like a punch. As Hank lunged forward, Elias moved like smoke, planting himself between them. "That is close enough," Elias said, his voice quiet but final. The deputy cleared his throat. "Mr. Whitaker, she said she is here willingly. I reckon our business is done." "We are not done," Hank seethed. "Sir," the deputy's voice turned to steel, "we are done." Defeated, Hank stared at the woman on the porch. A stranger with a rifle in her hand and fire in her soul. A woman he had never allowed to exist. "You will regret this," he snarled. "Maybe," Mary answered, "but I will regret it free." Hank climbed back on his wagon and left without another glance. The deputy tipped his hat and followed. As the wagon disappeared, Mary's legs gave out. Elias caught her arm, his grip firm and steady. "I cannot believe I did that," she whispered. "I can," he said. "He will be back. He will make trouble." Elias looked down at her, his hand still on her arm. "Let him." She noticed he had not tried to speak for her, had not stepped in while she was talking. "You let me say my piece," she said. "It was not my piece to say." "Most men would have," she countered. "I am not most men," he said simply. She straightened up and his hand fell from her arm. "I ought to check on the trap line." "I will come with you," he said. They walked together by the creek, not talking, just 2 people finally headed in the same direction. That evening, they sat on the porch steps. The stars were brilliant. "I never thanked you," she said. "For what?" "For not selling me back to him." Elias looked up at the vast, dark sky. "I never bought you. Besides, a person choosing to stay where they want to be, that is not a favor. That is just how things are supposed to be." Mary hugged her knees tight, making herself small like she'd done since she was a little girl. "Can I ask you something personal?" she finally whispered. "You can ask. Don't mean you'll get an answer. Why are you all alone up here? A man like you could have a family, a life in town." Elias was quiet for a good long while. "I had a wife," he said, his voice low. "Her name was Elizabeth. She died 6 years ago. The cholera took her and our boy in the same week. The little fella was only 3. Mary felt the air leave her lungs. "I buried them both myself down in the valley, sat by their graves for 2 full days. Then I got on my horse, rode up this mountain as far as I could go, and built this place. I told you because you asked, and because I reckon you know what it's like to lose it all and just keep walking." "I didn't lose everything," she mumbled into her knees. "I never had nothing to lose." "That ain't true." "It is." "No." His voice was gentle but solid as a rock. "You had yourself. You had your mama's Bible, and you had the grit to get up every single morning. That ain't nothing, Mary. That's everything." She looked up, tears shining on her face. "You see too much. I just see what's there. Please stop." "Why?" "Because if you keep on talking like that, I might start to believe you, and I have no idea what happens then." "Well," Elias said, his gaze as steady as the mountains around them, "I reckon you find out." Mary wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand and stood. "Good night, Elias." He stayed on that porch as the stars wheeled across the sky. Something out there changed, not a sound, just a feeling. It was like the mountain itself decided these 2 lost souls belonged right here, together. But the world below wasn't through with them. 3 days later, Mary was hanging clothes when she spotted 4 riders on the ridge. The sun glinted off something shiny, a badge, and the man wearing it, sitting tall in the saddle, was Sheriff Caldwell. Mary dropped the wet shirt and ran for the barn. "Elias!" He came out, took one look at her face and then at the riders. He didn't reach for his gun. He just looked at Mary with those calm, unbreakable eyes and said 3 words that changed her world. "We stand together." She grabbed her rifle, worked the lever, and stood right beside him. Sheriff Caldwell reined in his horse about 20 yards out. He was a big man, built solid, with a face that looked like it was carved from granite. Flanked by 2 deputies, he stared them down. The 4th man hung back, and when Mary's eyes focused, her blood ran cold. It was her father, Hank Whitaker, watching it all unfold. "Lias Boone," the sheriff called out, his voice heavy. He didn't get off his horse. That was a statement. "Sheriff," Elias answered, his own voice calm and level. "Looks like you brought trouble with you." Caldwell's jaw clenched. "Don't get smart, Boone. I've got a formal complaint says you took Hank Whitaker's daughter by force." "That's a lie," Mary said, her voice sharp. The sheriff looked at her like a piece of furniture had spoken. "Ma'am, I'll get to you. You'll get to me right now," Mary shot back, stepping forward. "I told your deputy I am here because I choose to be. My father heard me say it. Your daddy tells it different." From the tree line, Hank yelled, "You see? He's twisted her mind. Those are his words coming out of my daughter's mouth." Mary gripped her rifle tighter. "These are my words. They've always been my words. You just never cared to listen." Caldwell raised a hand. "That's enough." He turned back to Elias. "Boone, I'll ask you plain. Did any money or goods change hands for this woman?" Elias didn't even blink. "Hank Whitaker offered me horses and supplies for work on his homestead. He threw in his daughter's labor. I took the stock and supplies. I told Mary in front of her father that she had a choice. She chose to come here." "That's not how a trade works," Caldwell grumbled. "I ain't in the business of owning people, Sheriff." "Nobody said owning," the sheriff shot back. "But there are laws about appearances, about a young woman living with a man she ain't married to." "You rode 4 hours up a mountain for appearances?" Mary asked, her voice like ice. "I rode up here because your father filed a complaint with a judge, and that judge sent me." Now we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. What's the hard way look like? Elias asked. The hard way is me taking you to town in chains and letting the judge sort it out. On what charge? Elias's voice was still calm. Unlawful cohabitation, maybe. Abduction. A father's word carries a lot of weight round here. More than hers? That question hung heavy in the mountain air. One of the deputies, a younger fellow, shifted nervously. Sheriff, maybe we should just... Shut it, Wells. It was the same deputy from before. He wouldn't meet Mary's eyes. Caldwell dismounted, his boots crunching on the dirt. Boone, I've known you 10 years. You're a good man. But the law's the law. So you're going to ride back to town with me. You'll all stand before the judge and tell your stories. And if I say no, then these boys put you in irons, and we ride back anyway. It'll just look a whole lot worse for you. Elias looked over at Mary. It wasn't a look of fear. It was a question, the same one he'd given her from the start. Your choice. I'll go, Elias said. No! Mary grabbed his arm. It's all right, Mary. His voice was quiet and steady. If I fight, I prove their story is true. If I go, I prove mine. And if the judge sides with my father, then you get on that mare and you ride. You'll be free. I don't want to be free without... The words hung in the air between them. Elias gently took the rifle from her hands. Keep the homestead safe, he said. I'll be back. Promise me. But he couldn't make a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. He handed his rifle to Caldwell and mounted his horse. Mary stood on the porch watching them go. Her father rode past last. He looked right at her, and he was smiling. Not a cruel smile, a satisfied one. The smile of a man who'd won. He still had control. That smile broke her. Mary stayed on that porch till the dust settled, and the world was quiet again. Then she walked inside and sat at the table. She wasn't grieving. She wasn't panicking. She was thinking. She was thinking like a woman who had been underestimated her whole life and had finally realized what a powerful weapon that could be. Her father expected her to wait, to be the dutiful daughter. That was the old Mary. The new Mary grabbed her mother's Bible, shoved it in a saddlebag, saddled her horse, and started riding hard for town. The trail Elias had shown her was a rough shortcut through the mountains, but it would get her there hours faster. She rode into the town of Ridgeway as the sun was setting, covered in dust and sweat. It was time for everyone to hear her story in her own words. The town was not much, just a store, a saloon, and the courthouse at the far end with its leaning porch. Mary tied up the horse, her jaw set. She could see Sheriff Caldwell's men already there. People on the street stopped and stared at the girl they all knew had been traded away like a sack of grain, now walking alone and covered in trail dust. Mrs. Garrett came out of her store. Mary, child, where are you going? The hearing is at the courthouse. But your father said... I do not care what my father said. She kept walking. The courtroom was mostly full of local ranchers. Elias sat in a chair off to the side, looking tired but not beaten. He was not in chains, at least. He looked up when the door swung open. And when he saw Mary, the exhaustion on his face fell away, replaced by something that looked like a man seeing the sunrise after a long, dark night. Elias Boone figured he was facing this fight alone, but then the courtroom door swung open. Hank Whitaker, sitting smug across the room, had the satisfaction wiped clean off his face when he saw it was his daughter Mary. What in tarnation is she doing here? Hank demanded. Judge Harmon, a lean, gray-haired man known for being fair, looked up over his spectacles. I reckon she's here because this business concerns her, the judge said. Take a seat, miss. I'd rather stand, Your Honor. A quiet rumble went through the room. Women did not speak up in court, and they certainly did not refuse a judge's direction. The judge just looked at her for a second. Suit yourself. Now, Mr. Whitaker here says Mr. Boone took his daughter in a crooked trade. Mr. Boone says different. I want to hear what happened from Mr. Boone himself. Elias stood up and told it straight. He spoke of the trade, of asking Mary if she wanted to come, and of giving her a room of her own and the choice to leave whenever she pleased. The judge cut right to the heart of it. Have you laid a hand on this woman? No, sir, Elias said. I have not. Hank shot up from his chair. That is because he has twisted her mind. She is a simple girl. That is when Mary's voice rang out, clear as a bell on a Sunday morning. I am not simple, and I am not a girl. I am 26 years old. I can read, I can write, and I can shoot, and I can sure as heck speak for myself. A dead silence fell. Judge Harmon leaned back. Then go on, Miss Whitaker. With every eye in that room on her, Mary's heart pounded. She took a breath. My father traded me for 3 horses and a pile of supplies. He did not ask what I thought. He told Mr. Boone I was strong and quiet, just like he was selling a mule. Now hold on a minute, Hank started. You let her finish, the judge said sharply. For 14 years since my mother passed, Mary's voice cracked but did not break. I cooked and I cleaned and I mended. In return, I was told I was a burden every single day. Mr. Boone is the first person in all that time who asked me what I wanted. He gave me work with purpose, a place that felt safe, and a rifle to stand beside him, not behind him. He has treated me with more decency in 3 weeks than my own father has in my whole life. She looked her father square in the eye. You did not come here because you care about me. You came because I stopped being afraid of you. She is lying, Hank sputtered, his face turning purple. Any father, Mary said softly, would have said her name. In all the years I lived with you, you called me girl or her. You never once, not one time, said Mary. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Every person there was searching their memory, and they knew she was telling the truth. Judge Harmon slowly took off his spectacles and cleaned them. Mr. Whitaker, he said. Did you or did you not offer your daughter as part of a trade? Hank stammered. It was, an arrangement. For her own good. It appears Mr. Boone is the only one who asked her what was for her own good, the judge said. This complaint is dismissed. There is no crime here. And if I hear one more word about you bothering this woman, I will file a harassment order myself. He banged the gavel, and the room exploded with noise. Elias crossed the room and stood in front of Mary. She was shaking, all the fight draining right out of her. Her eyes were fierce and scared all at once. You came, he said, his voice low. Did you think I would not? I am learning, he said with the hint of a smile. They walked out into the gold of the evening sun, leaving the town's whispers behind them. Mary walked into that courtroom, a person the world had tossed aside, and she walked out owning her own name. This was only the beginning of them working as a team. Not long after, when rustlers tried to steal a neighbor's cattle, Mary was not sent away to safety. She was perched on a ridge with her rifle, watching Elias's back. It stirred something deep in her chest she had no name for. Mary Whitaker, you are a wonder. I am plain worn out. We can make camp up ahead. There's a flat spot near the aspens. I know, I saw it on the way down. They rode out of town together, the whispers trailing them to the city limits before fading out. They camped where Elias said. He made the fire while she tended to the horses, moving in a comfortable rhythm learned over 3 weeks. But tonight was different. The air felt thick, like just before a storm. Mary sat with her mother's Bible, tracing the pencil marks on the spine. He would have been mighty proud of you, Elias said quietly. How can you know that? She asked. Because I am. She hugged the book to her chest. Elias, yes, when we get home, I do not want my own room anymore. The fire popped and an owl hooted in the dark. Elias looked at her, and this time he gave a real smile. All right, he said, his voice a quiet promise. Mary laid on her bedroll, the fire warming her face. She felt the weight of 26 years of silence finally lifting from her soul. She had used her voice. She had been heard. She had made a choice. And the man who never wanted her to be anyone but herself was sitting just a few feet away, keeping watch. Home, she whispered. The word no longer sounded like a prison. It sounded like a new beginning. Their ride back was quiet, but it was a good kind of quiet. It was the silence of 2 folks who had walked through fire and were still standing. Every muscle in Mary's body screamed from the long ride. But underneath the ache was something new and strong, like iron cooled from the forge. She was never going back to the woman she used to be. As they topped the last hill and the cabin appeared, Mary reined in her horse. "What is it?" Elias asked. "Nothing." She just looked at her home, the place she had earned with her own 2 hands. He saw the look in her eyes and understood. "Welcome home," he said softly. That night their routine was the same, but the feeling was all new. After supper, Mary did not go to her room. She sat by the fireplace, and Elias took his usual chair. The fire crackled between them. "I meant what I said about the room." Elias put his cup down. "Mary, you do not have to. If you say that one more time, I will throw this cup right at your head." He stared at her. Then they both started to laugh. It was a real deep laugh that hurt a little because they were not used to it. Mary laughed so hard she cried, and Elias gripped his chair, shaking with it. When they finally quieted down, the whole cabin felt lighter. "I am not good at this," Elias admitted, wiping his eyes. "I have been alone for so long, I do not know how to be any other way." "You think I'm any better?" she replied. "The longest talks I had before you were with my chickens. They listen better than most folks." He gave her that real smile again, the one she had earned bit by bit. "Mary, I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen." "All right. When your father brought you here, talking about you like you were old junk he was clearing out, I wanted to hit him." My hand shook. I wanted to hit him so bad. "I did not take his deal because I needed a hand. I took it because I looked at you and I saw someone whose spirit was about to die in that house, and nobody would even notice." Elias paused. "I am not done." He leaned in, his knuckles white. "I told myself it was just me being a decent man. But the whole truth is that when I saw you, something inside me that had been dead for 6 years moved. The fire popped, and Mary's heart pounded in her throat. "I am not asking for anything," he said. "I am just done pretending I brought you here only to mend fences." Mary looked down at her own hands, calloused from weeks of hard work. These were not the same hands that had hung useless in her father's house. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "Nobody ever showed me. Me either. Elizabeth and we just figured it out." It was the first time he had spoken his wife's name. Mary could hear the love still in it, a love that was not a rival but a memory. "Tell me about her," she said. Elias looked surprised. "What?" "Elizabeth. I want to know about her." Most women would have been too scared to ask. "She was small," he began, "but she had a voice that could calm a storm. She was the strongest woman I ever knew until now." He looked at Mary. "She loved wildflowers and pressed them in her books. When she got sick, she made me promise I would not stop living. I swore I would not. And then I broke that promise for 6 long years." "You did not break it," Mary said gently. "You just paused." He looked at her, and his eyes softened. "Paused. I like that." "Elias." "Yes. I am going to move my things into your room now. I was not going to say a thing." She stood, and he stood with her. She closed the distance between them and laid her hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat strong and fast. "There it is," she whispered. "Proof you are alive." His hand covered hers, big and warm. "Mary." "Yes. I am going to kiss you now. I would be very disappointed if you did not." It was a slow, careful kiss, a choice they were both making together. When he pulled back, she kept her eyes closed, memorizing the feeling. She had waited 26 years to be kissed like she was precious. "Well," she said, opening her eyes, "that was worth waiting for, every single one of those years." He pulled her into his arms. Mary woke to a panicked shout. It was not Elias. He was already up and outside. She pulled on her dress, grabbed the rifle, and ran barefoot toward the noise. Elias was crouched over a young boy, who could not have been a day over 14. The kid was a mess of bruises and torn clothes, shivering so hard his teeth chattered. "They're coming!" he gasped through a split lip. Dalton's men. They took every last thing. He told them his name was Samuel, and his family's ranch was 3 hours south. Elias's face grew hard. He knew of Dalton's outfit. He figured it was 4, maybe 5 riders. Elias said they had been causing trouble in the high valleys all summer, and nobody had lifted a finger to stop them. Samuel told them his pa was hurt something awful, leaving his ma and little sister to fend for themselves. "We're going," Mary said, her voice full of steel. Elias started to argue, but she stopped him cold. "That family needs our help, and we're the only ones around." He looked at her for a long moment, then gave one sharp nod. "Saddle the horses." Within 20 minutes, the 3 of them were riding hard to the south. Mary and Elias rode in a heavy silence. The decision had been made. 2 hours down the trail, Samuel pulled his horse to a stop. Smoke. Elias looked toward the valley. "That's no campfire," he said, his voice turning cold and dangerous. As they got closer, they saw the Pwitt family's homestead. The barn was completely engulfed in flames. "You wait here," Elias ordered Samuel. "You see riders, you fire 1 shot in the air." He turned to Mary, but she spoke before he could. "Don't you even think about telling me to stay." A small smile touched Elias's lips. "I was just going to say, stay on my left side. I shoot right-handed." They rode down into the scene of pure destruction. Fences were torn down, and the barn was collapsing in on itself. Elias called out, and the barrel of a shotgun appeared in a window. "It's Elias Boone," he announced. "Your boy Samuel sent us for help." A thin woman with graying hair and blood on her apron appeared at the broken door. "They took it all," she said, her voice cracking. "And they beat my Tom until he couldn't move." Mary was already off her horse. "My name is Mary. I am going to help your husband." Inside, Tom Pwitt was laid out on a mattress, his face swollen and one leg bent at a terrible angle. Mary had set bones before on her father's ranch. She got to work without a word, using strips of cloth and a wooden spoon to make a splint. Tom Pwitt let out a single sharp scream and then bit down hard to keep quiet. When she came back outside, Elias was reading the tracks in the dirt. "5 riders," he said. "They're driving about 30 head of cattle south. Got a few hours on us." Mary met his gaze. "You would let me ride with you?" He looked back at her, his eyes full of respect. "Mary, after everything I have seen you do, I do not let you do anything. You decide for yourself what you're going to do." A powerful feeling of being truly seen washed over Mary. She turned to Mrs. Pwitt. "We are going after your cattle." The woman was shocked. "Just the 2 of you against 5 men?" "We will be back," Mary promised with confidence. They rode south, following the clear trail. Elias's face had become a quiet, focused mask. "Have you ever killed men before?" Mary asked him softly. "Yes," he answered. "And it never gets any easier. You should be worried about any man who says it does. I do not want to kill anyone. But I will do it to get that family's cattle back, and to make sure you are safe." "So will I," she said without hesitation. He looked at her and she could see the fear in his eyes. "I know you will, and the thought of losing you terrifies me." The words hung in the air between them. They found Dalton's men 2 hours later, camped carelessly in a canyon. They were drinking whiskey around a fire with one man asleep. "Sloppy," Elias whispered. "I will go in from the east. You stay on this ridge. When I fire, you put a bullet in the dirt next to the sleeping one to scare him. If they decide to fight, you shoot whoever points a gun at me." He took her arm. "If I go down, you ride. Do you understand?" Mary looked straight at him, her own will as strong as iron. "No, I am not riding away from you. Not today, not ever. So you had better make sure you do not go down." He simply stared at her, knowing she meant every single word. Their teamwork was a sight to see. Together, the 2 of them scared off 5 grown men without a single person getting hurt. They moved like they were 2 parts of the same whole. Mary stayed on that ridge until the thieves were long gone. Then her hands started to shake. When she climbed down, Elias was already gathering the cattle. He was covered in dust and breathing hard, but he was alive. "You shot at a man's head," he said. "I shot at a rock next to a man's head. There is a difference." "Not much of one," he said. He walked over, took the rifle from her trembling hands, and set it down carefully. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her so tight she could feel his heart beating against her own. "Do not ever scare me like that again," he whispered into her hair. She hugged him back just as tight. "Then do not ever ask me to ride away from you again." "Deal," he said. They drove the cattle back home as the sun set. It was a deal made not with words in a courtroom, but with trust and courage under the wide Texas sky, and watched 30 head of cattle come home. She sank onto the steps, her face wet with tears. Samuel raced to the corral, counting every last one. He turned back, a wide grin splitting his bruised face. "They are all here, every single one." Tom Pruitt called out from the house, asking who those folks were. Mrs. Pruitt dried her eyes and stood tall. She looked at Mary and Elias with a thanks that ran deeper than words. "Neighbors," she told him. "They're neighbors." That word wrapped around Mary like a warm blanket. She had never been a neighbor before, never been part of something. They stayed until Tom was resting easy, and Mrs. Pruitt had a loaded gun close by. "You come back now, you hear?" Mrs. Pruitt said, her grip tight on Mary's hand. "Come back because I could sure use a friend." Mary squeezed her hand back, unable to speak, and just nodded. They rode toward home as the stars lit up the sky. The horses knew the way. Mary and Elias rode so close their knees nearly brushed, both of them plumb tuckered out. Elias. "Yeah, we did a good thing today. We surely did. I have never done a good thing before, not one that truly mattered to somebody else. That is not true. You matter to me every single day." She reached over and took his hand, and he laced his fingers through hers. They rode the rest of the way home like that, quiet and connected. Back at the cabin, Elias tended to the horses while Mary went inside to get a fire going. She put the coffee on and stood in the middle of the room. 3 weeks ago, she had arrived with nothing. Now this place was theirs. She heard his boots on the porch, and he came in smelling of horse and the high country. "Coffee is on," she said. "I know. I could smell it from the corral." He sat down and she poured them each a cup. They drank by the firelight, shoulder to shoulder, too tired for talk but too full to be silent. "Elias." "Yeah, I love you," she said, plain as day. Her voice was steady, a woman stating a fact she had proven to herself through fire and trouble. Elias put his cup down and turned, taking her face in his scarred, gentle hands. "I love you, Mary. I have been loving you since you stood by that fence, and I could not look away." She placed her hands over his. "Then stop looking away," she told him. He did not. 3 weeks turned into 3 months. Mary woke up next to Elias every morning, each time taking a moment to know it was real. The arm around her waist belonged to a man who never raised his voice. The cabin smelled of coffee she had learned to set out the night before. The sounds were not her father's boots, but the wind in the aspens and the song of the creek. Some mornings the remembering made her smile. Others it brought an ache of gratitude so deep it felt like sorrow turned inside out. This morning she woke up and he was already on the porch staring south with a cup of coffee in his hand. "What is it?" she asked. "We have got a rider coming." Mary's gut tightened, and she grabbed the rifle by the door. "It was pure instinct now. Easy now," Elias said softly. "Just one rider, and he is not in a hurry. That is not trouble. Last time a lone rider came slow. He was a deputy with my father right behind him. A fair point." Elias took a sip of his coffee. "But this one's on the Pruitt Trail." It was Samuel. The boy looked bigger than he had just 3 months ago, with broader shoulders and a healthy color from the sun. He rode up to the cabin with a big grin. "Morning, Miss Mary, Mr. Boone." Mary leaned on the porch rail. "Does your mama know you are out here by yourself?" Yes, ma'am, she sent me with a message. He handed her a folded piece of paper. Mary read it, then read it again, her hands starting to tremble. What is it? Elias asked. Mary looked up, her eyes wide with an emotion he could not name. My father is dead. The words fell into the quiet morning. When? 3 days ago. His heart just stopped. Mrs. Garrett wrote this. She said the hired hands found him in the house. Samuel looked down at his horse's mane, not sure where to look. He understood death, but was too young for the silence it left behind. Should I head back, Miss Mary? No, Samuel. Stay and have a biscuit. After the boy went inside, Mary stared out at the trees, the letter clutched in her hand. Elias knew to wait. Pushing her for words was pointless. I do not feel a thing, she finally said, and that is not right. He was my father. I am supposed to feel something. Says who? Everyone. The whole town will be whispering about how Hank Whitaker's daughter did not even show up for his funeral. Is that what you want? To go to the funeral? No. I want to feel something that is real, not just what I am supposed to. Well, what do you feel? She thought about it truly and honestly. Free, she admitted. I feel free, and I hate myself for it. You spent 26 years with a man who treated you like livestock. You do not owe him any grief, Mary. You do not owe him a single tear. The fact that you are even wondering what to feel shows you have more heart for him dead than he ever had for you living. He died all alone, she whispered, her hand covering her mouth. He chose that path every time he pushed you away or called you worthless. You did not do this to him. He did it to himself. Then why does it hurt so bad? Because you are a good person, and good people hurt when they should not have to. And then she cried. It was not like in the courtroom, full of fire. This was a quiet grief, not for the man who died, but for the father she never had. Elias just held her steady and silent, letting her feel it all. When she finished, she wiped her eyes. I need to go down there, she said. To the ranch? Not for the funeral, for my mother's grave. I have not been in years. And one other thing. What is that? The ranch is mine now. The lawyer in town has the papers. Elias's face did not move, but she saw the worry in his eyes. He was thinking about a life for her down in the valley, a life that did not include him. Stop it, she said. I did not say a word. You did not have to. I'm going down to settle things, and then I am coming home. Want me to come with you? I want you to always come with me. They rode down 2 days later. The valley felt heavy, like the sky was pressing down after months of freedom in the mountains. The ranch looked like it had been dying right along with her father. The fences were rotted and the barn was leaning sideways. The garden she once loved was just a patch of weeds and cracked dirt. She swung down from her horse and stood before the house. You do not have to go in there, Elias said. Yes, I do. She pushed the door open, and the smell of stale whiskey and dust hit her. The kitchen, where she had cooked thousands of meals, was a mess of dirty plates and empty bottles. She walked through each room without touching anything, seeing it for what it was. Not a prison, just a sad little house where a sad, lonely man had faded away. In her old room, she found the shelf where her mother's Bible used to be. But tucked in a crack behind it was a small, faded photograph of her mother Ruth, smiling as she held a baby. Mary. She pulled the picture out and held it tight. There you are, Mama, she whispered. She left the house and did not look back. Elias was waiting, and he just nodded when he saw the photo in her hand. At the cemetery, her mother's grave was covered in weeds. The name on the wooden marker was almost gone. Mary knelt and cleared it all away with her bare hands. I am okay, Mama, she said to the earth. I found a good man. You would like him. He sees me for who I really am. She placed a wildflower she had picked on the grave, and it felt like closing a chapter. I am going to get you a real headstone, she said, with your name on it. Just Ruth. She stood and brushed the dirt from her knees. Elias stood a few feet away, hat in his hands. Ready? She asked. He nodded. Just one more stop. The lawyer's office was run by a man named Prescott. Miss Whitaker, my condolences. Thank you. I believe you have some papers for me. Indeed. Your father left no will, so the ranch passes to you. 40 acres, the house, and all that is in it. What do you plan to do with the property? Mary looked at Elias, who stood by the door, leaving the choice to her. Sell it, she said. Mr. Prescott looked surprised. All of it? Every last bit. I do not want it. I do not need it, and I will not let it tie me down. Very well, he said, adjusting his glasses. Where should I send the money from the sale? Mary gave him the first true smile she had worn in that town. To the Puit family, at the South Fork Ranch. Every last cent. Elias turned his head and stared, but she did not look at him. She could feel his surprise like the warm sun. All of it? Mr. Prescott repeated. All of it, Mary confirmed. They have a barn that needs fixing, and a man who needs a doctor. That money will do more good for them than it ever did for my father. Miss Whitaker. Mrs. Boone. The words just came out. She felt Elias go quiet behind her. I beg your pardon? Prescott said. Mary turned to look at Elias. He stood in the doorway, hat in his hands, with a look on his face she had never seen. All his walls were gone. If you will have me, she said. Elias crossed the room in 3 strides and took her face in his hands, just like the first night she told him she loved him. Mary, he said, I have had you since the day you told those rustlers to turn around. Is that a yes? That is a yes, a hallelujah, and an amen. Prescott cleared his throat. I can draw up a marriage certificate if you like. I am a notary, which is close enough to a preacher in this territory. Do it, Mary said, right now. They were married right there in the lawyer's office. There were no flowers or family, just the words from a territorial handbook. Elias said, I do, like he had been waiting years to say it. Mary said, I do, like a woman who finally knew what those words meant. When it was done, Prescott stamped the paper and shook their hands. Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Boone. They walked out into the high sun. Folks stared, of course. Mary Boone was walking down Main Street with the mountain man they had all whispered about. Mrs. Garrett stood outside her store. She looked at Mary, then at Elias, then at how Mary's hand rested so easily in his arm. Mary Whitaker, she said, what in the world have you done? Got married. To whom? To the only man who ever asked what I thought. Mrs. Garrett's eyes filled with tears, and she hugged Mary tight. Your mother would be dancing, she whispered. They left town that afternoon for good, riding north toward home. The word felt different now. It was not a question anymore. It was solid, fixed, and permanent. Home. When they got back, Samuel was on the porch, whittling a stick. He jumped up when he saw them. Is everything all right? Any trouble? No trouble, Elias said. We got married? Samuel's jaw hit the porch floor before he let out a whoop that scattered the chickens. Wait till I tell Ma. She will cry for a week straight. Tell your mama something else, Mary said, swinging down from her horse. She looked at the boy who had ridden for help with a busted face, who had trusted them. Tell her the ranch money is coming to her. All of my father's land. Samuel just stared. Miss Mary, Mrs. Boone, we cannot take that. You can, and you will. Your pa needs a doctor, your barn needs a roof, and your mama needs to sleep through one whole night. That money cannot bring my father back, but it can help your family get back on its feet. That is what it is for now. Samuel's eyes got shiny. He wiped them with his sleeve, trying to be a man about it. Thank you, he said, his voice cracking. Go on home, Samuel. Tell your family. He got on his horse, turned once in the saddle to wave, and Mary waved right back. Then it was just the two of them. That evening, Mary sat with her mother's photograph propped against the salt jar. The marriage certificate was spread out beside it. A woman could wake up as property and go to bed as a wife, as a partner who belonged to herself. Elias came in and sat across from her. I want to build a second room, he said. What for? For the future. Mary looked up into his steady gaze. Are you thinking about children, Elias Boone? I am thinking about possibilities, something I have not thought about in 6 years. Are you not scared? Terrified. Good. Me too. Then we will be terrified together. She reached out and took his hand. I want to plant flowers, she said. Wildflowers, along the path to the creek, the kind Elizabeth used to press. Elias's breath hitched and his hand tightened on hers. You do not have to do that, he said, his voice rough. I want to. Her and your boy were part of this place before I was. They ought to be remembered. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, then closed his eyes. Ruth and Elizabeth, Word traveled through the valley the way a slow creek finds the river. They told the story of Mary Whitaker. The woman traded for 3 horses, sent up a mountain, who found love and then had to fight like a wildcat to keep it. One afternoon, while pulling weeds, Mary heard a horse coming up the trail. She stood and shaded her eyes. It was a girl, maybe 17, on a weary-looking horse, carrying nothing but a single canvas sack. The girl stopped at the edge of the property, her shoulders slumped, her eyes red. She looked at Mary like a sailor on a sinking ship looks at the last lighthouse on earth. Are you Mary Boone? The girl asked, her voice trembling. I am, Mary said. My daddy says I have to marry Mr. Thorne, the banker. He is 53 years old. The girl's chin quivered. He says it is a good match and that I ought to be grateful. Mary put down her garden hoe. Well, get down off that horse, child, she said softly. Come on inside. There is coffee. The girl, Clara, followed her in. Elias was at the table cleaning his rifle. He looked up and saw the girl's face, and he saw the dark bruise on her wrist she tried to hide. He stood up right away. I will be in the barn, he said. Stay, Mary told him. A whole silent conversation passed between their eyes. He sat back down, put the rifle aside, and poured a 3rd cup of coffee, pushing it gently across the table to Clara. When the girl finished telling her story, Mary leaned in close. All right, here is what is going to happen. You are staying here tonight. Tomorrow I am riding into town to have a word with your father. And if he will not listen to reason, then I will have a word with Judge Harmon. My father will not listen, Clara whispered. Then Judge Harmon will, Mary said with certainty. How do you know? Because I stood in that same courtroom and I told the truth. The truth won then, and it will win for you too. Clara's eyes welled up with tears. They said you were brave. They said you changed things. I did not change a thing, Mary said. I just stopped being quiet. Elias looked at his wife, her face strong in the firelight. Then he looked at the frightened girl. You can stay as long as you need, he told Clara, his voice firm and kind. Nobody is going to take you from this house unless you choose to walk out that door yourself. Clara looked from his face to Mary's, and then she put her head in her hands and finally let herself cry. Mary pulled the trembling girl close, giving her the comfort she had ached for at 17 and 26. It is all right, she whispered. You are safe here. How did you do it? Clara asked, her voice barely there. How did you stop being afraid? Mary's eyes met Elias's. He gave her that same steady, unbreakable look he always had. I did not stop being afraid, Mary said. I just found something worth being brave for. Later, with Clara sleeping soundly in the room Elias built for new beginnings, they stood together on the porch. He held her close. We are going to keep collecting strays, are we not? He said. They are not strays, Elias. They are just folks who found their way home. She leaned into his warmth. I used to think God gave up on me, but I reckon he was just waiting for me to find you. He kissed her forehead, holding her tighter. The wind moved through the aspens as the creek sang its familiar song. A coyote called into the darkness, and another answered, their lonely sounds making the night feel whole. Mary Whitaker Boone stood on that porch, held by a man who saw her for exactly who she was. Below, the valley of people who had ignored her for 26 years were starting to say her name with respect. Behind her, a girl slept in a room built on hope. The endless sky above made every cruel thing from her past seem as small as it truly was. She had been treated like property and thrown away by the one who should have protected her. But she had turned every wound and silent year into a life so full of purpose and hard-won joy. Nobody would ever own her again. Mary Boone, strong, unbreakable, and finally free, was just getting started.